So, that was pretty whelming, huh? Not overwhelming, not underwhelming, just kind of whelming. Now, to be honest, this is going to be pretty difficult to talk about because we had two Canucks games at different times, and I didn't watch one of the games. The other game I watched the first two periods of before going to my own hockey event, which is why this video is coming out late. But today we're talking about the Vancouver Canucks kicking off their pre-season here on September 25th, 2022, 9/25/22, and pretty much when it comes to the two split games, I'm gonna be honest, man, from the eyes of a Vancouver Canucks fan, there really wasn't any incentive to go out there and pay attention to the game that was taking place in Calgary because, I mean, sure, if you wanted to pay attention to the game, you could have streamed it legally on the NHL's website, and you could have had the radio broadcast on Sportsnet 650 giving you the audio. But if we're gonna be honest here, man, let's just go over the rosters of each of the Vancouver Canucks split squads in Vancouver and Calgary today. The Canucks game in Vancouver had a roster that featured the likes of Bo Horvat, Connor Garland, you had Elias Pettersson, Andrei Kuzmenko, Ilya Mikheyev, you had Jack Rathbone, Tyler Myers, Spencer Martin and Arturs Silovs are in here too. Meanwhile, the team in Calgary, their roster was set as Dakota Joshua, Jason Dickinson, Klimovich, Höglander, Carlson, Lazar, Stevens, Dermott, Burrows. I'm gonna be honest, man. The lineup in Calgary was not great. It featured like three bona fide NHL players, and those bona fide NHL players are kind of bottom six caliber guys, plus Höglander. That team ended up losing 4-0 to a Calgary Flames squad that featured the likes of Jonathan Huberdeau, and I mean, it's easy to see what the teams were doing, right? They were sending out squads on their own home arenas that featured more star players than the squads that were going to the other rink, so the home fans would actually have something to cheer for. At least, that's what it was like in theory. Meanwhile, if you go over to what happened in tonight's game in Vancouver in Rogers Arena, the 4 p.m. PST game, the Canucks gave us a few things to pay attention to as the year is going to go on. Firstly, they didn't score a goal until the third period. It was 2-0 Calgary at the start of the third. And I know it's the preseason, so a lot of these players are going to be a bit rusty or not going to see the best passes or the best decision-making, but that's okay. Because the Vancouver Canucks in the first two periods of the Vancouver game, and I have to keep on differentiating that, saying the Vancouver game or the Calgary game. Let's just say Vancouver game. We're not going to talk about the Calgary game because they got stomped. But the Canucks in the first 40 minutes of the game here were honestly not too bad. It's just Dustin Wolf was really good, and you had yourselves a pretty scrambly game in general. There were some good touches for Andrei Kuzmenko, especially early on. You can see that the offensive prowess that this guy has, playing alongside of Elias Pettersson and Ilya Mikheyev, it is legit. He looked like an NHL caliber guy that just had a little bit more to give. I don't want to make it seem like Kuzmenko was the perfect player out there today, but there definitely was a good foundation of a player in terms of how he's able to hold onto the puck, make some quick decisions, draw penalties early on as well. And you even saw in the power play him playing down low behind the net, which is where he was absolute money in the KHL last year, just potting in assists like crazy. You saw the speed of Ilya Mikheyev on display. There was a moment in, I believe it was the first period, where there was a pretty innocuous rush that Ilya Mikheyev had where he just picked the puck up in his own zone, or was it the blue line, something like that, and what normally would have been just a regular old dump and chase play turned into a 2-on-1 because Mikheyev was able to blitz by the guy that was defending against him. He's got wheels, and he used them pretty well in this game. Now, also, there was a pretty big scare with Ilya Mikheyev because he had to leave the game and he was out for the entire rest of the third period and parts of the second. But at the end of the day, it is preseason. If it is a precautionary thing, then that would make the most sense. I don't want to go out there and start believing, by the way, knock on wood, that this is not the case. I've been knocking on wood a lot recently. I've noticed that. It's been like 3 or something videos in the past week where we've done that. But I hope that he's not going to go out there and get announced with, I don't know, a 2-3 week injury or whatever that sidelines him for the beginning of the regular season because, yeah, that would be bad. I want to see this guy play 82 games, and he looked pretty good in the small sample that he also had. Not to mention the fact that Vasili Podkolzin showed a pretty interesting gear, not just in terms of the goal that he scored, we'll get to that as the video goes on, but we had ourselves bite. There was a play where I believe it was Gilbert, he knocked Podkolzin off his balance in the offensive zone, and Podkolzin, after getting up, ended up like giving a big cross-check to Gilbert, and the crowd reacted to that one because Pods was like, yeah, no, don't knock me down like that, bud. Know your place. And I thought that was a pretty good showcase of bite from the Vancouver Canucks youngin'. You also had yourselves a defense, that in which garnered some great discussion on social media. You had people praising the heck out of Jack Rathbone, who played like 26 minutes today. And he was absolutely incredible with controlling the blue line, making decisions, and just getting shots towards the goal. Meanwhile, you had yourselves a pairing of Danny DeKeyser and Tyler Myers, and you know what? I'm not going to say I'm surprised. You know, I watched some Detroit footage last season because I'm a Red Wings fan. Danny DeKeyser is absolutely not it, man. Like, I'm sorry, the guy is a good dude, and we know the dedication he had put himself through with the Detroit Red Wings, putting his body on the line, being overplayed, being overpaid as well. He just wasn't good, and here in Vancouver with Tyler Myers, man, he looked even worse. Danny DeKeyser went from playing with Moritz Seider last season and looking bad, to playing with Tyler Myers in a preseason game against an AHL Stockton Heat squad and looking even worse. Like, I get it. It's preseason. Nobody cares about the preseason. Nobody's going to remember this, but there's a reason this guy was brought in on a PTO and not signed to a regular contract. So, Danny DeKeyser, I don't really think that he is going to make a significant impact on the team. If anything, Jack Rathbone has to get that final spot. Then you had yourself some other guys. Wyatt Kalynuk was playing for the Canucks, and it was really interesting because Kalynuk is a guy that I've liked a lot for the past few years. He was on the Wisconsin Badgers with Cole Caulfield when Cole Caulfield and Turcotte were doing their thing in their rookie years, so I've always kind of familiarized myself with Kalynuk's game. However, in this game, he got burned on the Mitch McLean goal. He got absolutely walked, which led to an open scoring chance for the Flames in front. Then there was another goal in the second period to close out that frame by Calgary where the puck was sent in deep, and then it was thrown out into the slot, and it bounced off of Martin, and it wasn't really that good of a goal. Spencer Martin played pretty well, all things considered, especially on the short-handed units when the Calgary Flames had all their their power plays in the first 40 minutes. And then in the third, you had yourselves Arturs Silovs coming in, and he looked pretty good as well. Nice to see Arturs Silovs going out there and gaining some confidence in the NHL preseason. You also had yourself some Canucks goals. It's Tyler Myers who brings the puck into the zone. He drops it back for Vasili Podkolzin, who completely walks around the Calgary defender and then comes in on goal, backhand, forehand. He teases it, and then he ultimately shoves the puck in. Podkolzin puts goals in, and you saw yourself probably the best showcase of poise that Podkolzin has showcased in his entire career so far on that play. I know it's preseason, man, but that was a great goal. I loved seeing that. And then, in the dying seconds of the third period, the Vancouver Canucks with the 6-on-5 advantage. You had yourselves Kuzmenko, who went down over to Pettersson, who went cross-crease to Garland. Garland takes a shot, the rebound comes back to him, and he scores. It's 2-2, the third period comes to an end, and then we go to overtime. And the Canucks look good in overtime, but then the referees. Okay, I'm not even going to talk about that, but Colson gets a penalty, Calgary goes into 4-on-3, they score. Okay, game over. When it comes to the preseason, you gotta really, think about it. What are we watching these games for? We're watching these games to evaluate our players. Our players. I say our players like we're a part of the team. The players of the team that we cheer for. And just try to see what's working, what's not working, who is pretty competent at this level. Wins and losses, they don't really matter. Overtime is extra hockey, so that's fine. Sometimes they even add an extra shootout just because. But either way, when it comes to what we saw today, I kind of came away watching tonight's action with more positive things in my mind about this team than not. Kuzmenko looked good, Podkolzin looked good, I loved Rathbone's game, Silovs was better than I thought it would be, and Spencer Martin was pretty solid as well. Meanwhile, you go over to the Calgary game, and I honestly... 4-0 when your best player is Niels Höglander or Jason Dickinson, that's not really a team that I think has too much going for them, but either way, hopefully there's some pretty good things to come out of the Canucks next time they play a preseason game. I believe it's Thursday, something like that, against the Seattle Kraken, and hopefully the squad will actually be put together properly. I don't know if we're going to see Brock, I don't know if we're going to see Ilya Mikheyev, but I'd like to see JT Miller. Let's see what he does after getting that big money contract extension. Talk to the comments though, either way, all your thoughts about the Vancouver Canucks and their preseason action today against the Calgary Flames in the split series, the home and home, the Vancouver game, the Calgary game. For some reason, the Calgary game started an hour later than the Vancouver game, even though Calgary is ahead of Vancouver timeline-wise. It's kind of weird how they did that. But talk in the comments either way all your thoughts. What stood out to you? What do you think is interesting to point out from tonight's action? I hope you enjoyed this Juraj, and bye.